So the reason these guys are so active right now is because today is a waxing gibbous moon, which means it's the day before the full moon. It's around noon. It's pretty close to noon right now, which means that the sun is almost directly overhead. The moon is all the way on the other side of the earth, almost in line with the sun and the earth. And so when they all line up, it has an effect on the fish's activity. Tomorrow it's going to be even stronger because it's going to be a full moon. So around this time tomorrow, they'll be just as probably more active than they are right now. I'm here standing about chest deep in water, actually up to about my rib cage, and I'm feeding these bluegill. I'm standing underneath my boat, which is on a boat lift, and I'm here on Spring Valley Lake. And there's a big bruiser swimming around my feet. I could feel him, but yet he hasn't come up yet. It's probably a carp, because if it was a catfish, I think these guys would scatter, because yesterday I was feeding them, and about 3 or 4 big, about 15-inch catfish came up and started feeding, and they took off because the catfish are a lot more predatory. Like, the catfish will pretty much eat anything, living or dead, whereas the carp are kind of more vegetarians. You don't catch carp on like worms and stuff. Mostly you catch them on like corn and dough balls. But these are bluegill, and I'm feeding them some commercial fish food I bought just to do this with them. They're acclimating to me pretty well. They seem to like me. They come up and kiss me once in a while. And let's see, I'll get some to some of these guys out there. Watch this. See? These guys love me. Watch this. See that? And so just to illustrate what a few hours difference makes, here we are 3 hours later, and yeah, I got some fish to come up, but we don't have that big school hanging out over there underneath the pontoon like I did earlier, because the sun and the moon are no longer lined up directly overhead and directly underfoot. They're still pretty active throughout the day, because it is a waxing gibbous, but we don't have that big school hanging out over there. I got a few eating right here that I was able to bring up, but anyways, they're still going to be pretty active today, but just not at the peak like they were around noon. Now the sun has moved a little bit away from its zenith, and the sun and the moon is like, it's not directly underfoot, it's sort of at an angle now. And so they're still active, but just not as much as they were a little while ago. 3 hours ago to be exact. Okay, so I wanted to show here a screenshot from my phone where I have an app that shows the solunar effect for the day when I took these videos. It was August 26, 2026, and you can see it was a waxing gibbous moon. On that day, you got an 85% rating. This graph here shows how much the moon and the sun and the earth are going to affect the fishing. It's very high effective state. It's all very high. And at noon, it's very high, almost as high as it can go. But then when the sun and the moon and the earth go out of alignment, it starts decreasing to about 3 o'clock. And my interpretation is that's why there were so many fish schooling underneath my boat at noon compared to at 3. There's still pretty good activity. I was still able to bring them up, but they weren't all at the surface, looking for food like they were at noon. So the other thing I wanted to clarify was that it's not so much that the sun and the moon and the earth go out of alignment between noon and 3 p.m. because the whole day they're kind of in alignment because it's a waxing gibbous. It's very close to the full moon. But what happens is as the earth rotates between noon and 3, the sun is no longer like at its, I call it zenith. I think the actual term would be transit or solar noon, which means that it's at its highest point in the sky. And as we go towards 3 o'clock, the earth rotates and the sun is no longer directly overhead and the moon is no longer directly underfoot on the other side of the earth. They're kind of at an angle. So that's why the effect decreases. Okay, another interesting thing I wanted to point out is that you can see on the state, since it's a waxing gibbous, that means we're moving towards the full moon. That means that as we move towards the full moon, the earth and the sun and the moon are getting more in alignment. So you can see that the effect of those celestial bodies are increasing throughout the day. Now I'm going to go to the next day, which is this is the 27th, and it's a full moon on this day, and the effect is larger. It's not rated at 96%, and sometimes people will go and will go, oh well, I fished on the full moon or I fished on the new moon and there wasn't good fishing. But there's other factors too. Like for instance, one of the biggest factors is the barometric pressure. If the barometer is dropping, like if a storm is coming in, the fish will become very active. Why they do that, I'm not really sure. There's theories. Some people think it's because the drop in barometric pressure drops pressure on their bladders, so they're able to come to the surface more. Maybe it's because the storm is coming. And then after the storm leaves, usually the barometric pressure rises. And when the barometric pressure is rising, it shuts down everything. It even shuts down the effect of the sun and the earth and the moon. So all this stuff can go out the window if you have a rising barometer, from my experience. But if the barometer is dropping and you have a full moon or new moon or everything's in alignment, that could really stimulate the fish activity. And there's all kinds of other factors too. It could be where the fish are on their feeding cycle, the time of year, the temperature of the water. You know, is there even any fish around? Are the fish schooling? Sometimes they travel around and you're not going to catch your fish if they're not where you're at. So anyways, these are just some interesting variables that you will find to solve the mystery of why is it that sometimes you're catching all kinds of fish and sometimes there's nothing.